الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسول الكريم وعلى آله وأصحابه ومن استنى بسنة إلى يوم الدين. All praise is due to Allah, and may Allah's peace and blessings be on His last Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and on all those who follow the path of righteousness until the last day. This is the third of the sessions on da'wah, the fundamentals of da'wah. And in this one, as I promised in the first and second sessions, we will be looking at the methodology of da'wah. After having looked first at the goals, actually we began with an introduction discussing the nature of da'wah with regards to Muslims, whether it is something obligatory or something which we are just encouraged to do. And then we looked at the actual goals of da'wah, which we identified as being Tawheed and Islam. And in this session now we'll be looking at how should we go about conveying that message, calling people to Islam. I briefly mentioned in the beginning also that this is as a result of some questions which were raised, that there were two methods, basically. We could say there are the indirect set of methods and the direct set of methods. Now, the indirect method involves, fundamentally we could say, the example. That the Muslim individual or community becomes an example, wherein he or she calls people to Islam without having to actually say, this is Islam, or you should follow Islam, etc. When a Muslim abides by the principles of Islam in all aspects of his or her life, then they become the kind of example which would cause people to want to find out more. What makes this person tick? What makes them the way they are? Because Islam, as we said earlier, is a way of life, meaning that it is a living faith which should affect all aspects of the individual's character, his morals, etc. This is something that when we go into the actual study of Islam, we have to keep this in mind, that Islam is not merely the accumulation of certain facts and figures which we apply in a ritualistic manner. We know that there are 5 times daily prayer, and the prayer consists of standing, bowing, kneeling, etc. Fasting involves not eating between dawn and sunset. These are all facts. But for this salah, for the fasting to be relevant, to actually serve the purpose for which it was designed, it has to be internalized. It has to be internalized, and the person does it out of conviction, out of an understanding of the essence, an understanding of what it is that Allah seeks to guide us to by way of the various practices of Islam. For example, the declaration of faith, what we know as the Shahada. This declaration of faith has a goal. There is something with regards to the Muslim character which it is designed to develop. Because we know Prophet Muhammad ﷺ had said, إِنَّمَا بُعِثْتُ لِأُتَمِّمَ makarim al-akhlaq. I was only sent to complete for you the highest of moral character traits. This is Islam. Islam is about a high level of moral character, the highest. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ stated that he came to make that clear for us, to remove the doubts around the various higher aspects of human character. As such, we find in the Shahada, in the declaration of faith, that when an individual makes that declaration, though he or she does so, saying, I bear witness that there is no God but Allah, and that Muhammad ﷺ is the last messenger of Allah, he does so not informing Allah about what he or she believes, because Allah already knows what is in people's hearts. So that act is not one of informing Allah. It is an act of informing the community of believers for a particular purpose. The purpose being that the community is informed that this person has now committed himself or herself to join the community. This is an open declaration, an open commitment. Why? Because each and every one of us goes through phases. Our faith is not a constant high. We are sometimes on a high, sometimes the faith becomes weak. It is something increasing and decreasing. And what happens is that Satan comes to us when the faith is its weakest, when we're on the down, on the decline. This is when Satan comes. And he will whisper, suggest to us other alternatives when we have problems, other solutions which are not consistent with Islam. Great calamity strikes, and the individual starts to think, of the escape, how to make himself feel good again or herself feel good again. Satan whispers in the ear, remember the reefer? That marijuana was real nice. When you were down, you used to smoke it and you used to feel real nice. Maybe you should just try out some of that. Just a little bit. It don't take too much now, just a little bit. So the thought comes, right? You're on a down. Now, if nobody knows that you're a Muslim, then you can go into those areas, meet the people, and get what you need, and even though it was only a little bit that you initially started off with, before too long, you're back out there again. But now, if you have informed the community that you're a Muslim, inshallah, when Satan whispers that whisper in your ear, and you now go out to go looking for marijuana, one of the brothers, inshallah, will see you on the way and say, brother man, where you going? We know you shouldn't be in this part of town. We know what goes on down there. You got a problem? Come on over to my place. Let's sit down and talk about it. Let's try and find some kind of solution. See what Islam has to offer. What I can do, what other brothers can do to help you out. So there will be people there, inshallah, to reach out and to help you, because you have let them know that you are a part of the community. But if you kept that hidden, then nobody would know, and you would slide out the way. So our declaration of faith is fundamentally for our benefit, not for Allah. Allah knows what's in the heart. But also it has in it a message that the Muslim character is an open character. He doesn't have stuff which is hidden. He's talking and smiling in your face, but he's got something else going on in his mind. No. If there's a problem, he or she will express it. Try to find some kind of solution to the problem. We don't have hidden agendas. Our organizations are open organizations, not secret clubs. Secret societies. This is why Allah curses the secret societies in the Qur'an. He said, "La khayra fi kathirin min najwahum." There's no good in most of their secret meetings. This is the Islamic approach. No, we are open. We have nothing to hide. Islam is clear. There are no secret teachings. You have some people who will tell you, listen, when Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was in the cave, when he was going to Medina, he left Mecca, and he had to spend some time in a cave when he was hiding out from those who were seeking to stop him, catch him on the way. Abu Bakr was there with him in the cave. He revealed some secrets to Abu Bakr. And later Abu Bakr, he passed on these secrets to so-and-so. And so-and-so passed it on to this other one and that other one and the other one, till it was passed down to my sheikh. I have the sheikh, he has that secret. You will hear people talking this kind of talk. Don't believe them. It's a lie. There was nothing hidden. Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said, "Taraktukum ala mahajjatin bayda." I left you on a clear white sheet. Layluha kanahariha. It's night like it's day. No difference between night and day. For us, we know the difference between night and day. It's dark and light. But what the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ left us with of Islam, it's like there is no night and day. It's all the same. Clear. La yazighu anha illa halik. Anyone who deviates from that, deviates into destruction. That's the Islamic message. No secrets. But as I said, there will be people out there offering secrets. The secret way. The shortcuts. You do this and you don't have to do all these other things. Believe me, there are no shortcuts. Islam is very clear and it's just one way. It's a difficult way, but it's one way. All the so-called shortcuts are shortcuts to hell. That's what they are. They are shortcuts to hell. Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, he sat with his companions and he drew a line in the dust, one line. Then at the side he drew shorter lines going off on each side. The shortcut. He asked the companions, you know what this is? They said, Allah and His Messenger knows. He said, this long line, the one down the middle, so that one is the straight path leading to paradise. And these other lines are the ones leading to hell. There is a devil on the head of each one of them calling people to it. Only one path, but many shortcuts to hell. So beware. Islam is a religion not of secrets, not of mysteries. Islam is a clear religion which anybody who wants to find out what it is can find out. Nothing hidden. So this is what the Shahada teaches us. That there is an openness there in the Muslim character. He doesn't hide things from people. He has intentions or feelings and so on. So he deals with people openly, straightforward, honest. So when we look at the pillars of Islam, all of them treat some aspect of human nature, human character, to develop and to produce the best of human character. So a person now who learns Islam in this fashion, as I said, as opposed to learning it as facts, numbers and rituals, a person who learns it in terms of what is behind it, what is intended by it, and applies it, then that person becomes a call in and of himself or herself to Islam without saying a word. Without saying a word. So that person, for example, when he works at his job, when the supervisor leaves and everybody else around him lays back, pulls out a cigarette, takes a break because the supervisor left, he keeps on working. She keeps on working hard. People around will be saying, hey, the supervisor's gone, take it easy, relax. But he or she will be saying no. No, because I signed a contract. My work contract said I would be paid for doing a certain amount of work. Now, if I slacked off, then I would be taking money for work that I didn't do. And that is cheating. That is stealing. It's unfair. Because God knows. Though the supervisor doesn't know, God knows. So that person is going to stand out amongst those people. That characteristic is going to make that Muslim different from all of the others that he or she is working with. And that will cause people to want to know why. What makes them like that? This is why Islam spread not by the sword, as the missionaries and Orientalists would have us believe. They tried to propagate. Islam was spread. Most of us who became Muslims, what we heard of Islam before was, these Arabs riding off the desert with a sword in one hand and the Qur'an in the other. You either accept that or you lose your head. This is how Islam was spread. That's the image that we got. But the reality is quite different from that. The vast majority of Muslims never ever saw a Muslim soldier. The largest number of Muslims, those who entered Islam, no Muslim soldier or army ever touched the shores of their land. Indonesia, 150 million Muslims. Not a single Muslim soldier set foot on those shores. Islam spread in Indonesia by traders. Traders who came out of southern Arabia, area called Hadramaut. They came there, they traded with the people, they settled and they traded with the people, and the people could see a difference. Everybody else, there were other people coming and trading from China and other places. But of course, those other people, they would, if something was broken, they would try and hide it and sell, You wouldn't find out until after you took it home and they had left. There are all the tricks of the trade, ripping people off left and right. But the Muslim, he's selling you something which is broken. He tells you, listen, there's something broken here. What kind of people are this? It surprised them. How people dealing so honestly with them. And that honesty in trade is what amazed the people and caused them to want to find out about Islam and accept Islam. That's how Islam spread. In most parts of the world. Through trade. And through the example of those who were trading. And that's we call the indirect method of da'wah. Now, how is that relevant to us here? Quite so. Trading, many of us have businesses. We should learn what are the principles of Islamic business. You see, we come into Islam and the area of business, most of us don't ever find out what are the rules. But in fact, there are rules for every aspect of life in Islam. Islam has its own economic system. And it has rules by which you are supposed to function. Buying and selling, there are rules governing it. How you can, what is allowed, what is not allowed. And if you follow those rules, then you become an example. You will stand out amongst all the other business people. People will know you for producing a good product, for giving them the best of what is available, for being honest. You will stand out. So, this indirect method is perhaps one of the most important methods of conveying Islam. And I would say that there's another aspect of the indirect method which would have perhaps the greatest effect in America today. And that is the example of the community. I just spoke about the example of the individual. But there's also, even more powerful, the example of the community. People ask me sometimes, what do you think would be the best method of spreading Islam in America today? My view is that by setting up a Muslim community meaning not just we have a masjid here and you are living 20 minutes, that one is 10 minutes, people are all over the place. But no, we have a neighborhood, a whole neighborhood where 90% of the people in there, we don't have to, not to be everybody, but 90% of the people in there are Muslims. Our masjid is in there, our Islamic school is in there, our businesses are in there. Chinatown. All the major cities, Chinatown. The Chinese have done it. They've done it on the basis of nationalism. Because they come from China. The Chinese, they identify and they make a Chinatown, which is what we're talking about, a community. All the facilities of the community are there. Their community center and, their temples and everything is there. Shops, everything. Muslims, to get the example of Islam across to America, need to establish something similar. When they do, then when people speak about Islam, they can say, come see. Not just here, it's written on paper. You can read about it in the books. You hear the theory I'm telling you about, but you can't see it anywhere. Here. Come. You come into our area, what will you see? You will see an area completely drug-free. Because Chinatown is the center of drugs. Right? It's a whole different, they're in one area, but all the crime and corruption is all inside of there. So we're not just showing them people, we're showing them a whole other way of life, which is completely different from what's going on outside there. A place where people are living together not because they all come from the same country, which is what people expect, but because they're all united in the submission to the will of Allah. So that community will have Cambodians, will have Libyans, Egyptians, Saudis or wherever, and people from all over the Muslim world would be living in that community, which is what Islam is. And that in and of itself would be a powerful tool in getting the message of Islam across. They would see women covered up, reminding them of the biblical days. Mary, the mother of Jesus, and the women around. That's the type of women they're going to see there. As I said, no drugs, no discos, no cinemas, and all the corrupt elements that are outside. That place will be free of it. It will not be a place which is isolated from the rest of the society in the sense that people have closed the doors, nobody can get in, because like Chinatown, unless you're Chinese, you really can't get in there. You can go eat there, but you can't get in, So, whereas Islam town, right, or Muslim town, is one which will welcome people. It is open. It's not closed to only people of a particular persuasion. And what you would find is that our schools would be examples to the nation. Examples of high academics and high morals. And there are many people across the country who are non-Muslims but would like to put their kids in those kind of schools, but they can't find them. What is in schools is, drugs and weapons. There are some schools, I know they have metal detectors. Everybody's coming in, got to go through metal detectors. This is the situation today. So, by producing an alternative, this would speak, as they say, one picture is worth 1,000 words. It would speak for Islam on a level that no matter what we say or we write, we couldn't attain to that. And this dream, you could say, that I have, or proposal for a model Islamic community, is not something which we can just think about and reflect on and say how nice that would be. In fact, it is something that we all have to work for. Because we will never be able to establish Islam in America without it. That's the bottom line. We will never be able to establish Islam in America without it. Why? Because that is the prophetic model. That was the way of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Islam in Mecca 13 years was the state that we are in, that scattered state. But a foundation was being laid in faith. But when the community was made, when that Islamic community came into existence in Medina, and it was in an area where there were other non-Muslim communities. Remember, Medina was a city founded by the Jews, Yathrib. The Jews were the first ones there. They set it up. Arabs came afterwards and they built their homes in another part. So it was a mixture. And the Islamic community arose right in the middle. But it was evident to the people. The Muslims were known. When that Islamic community arose, then you found Islam took off. In the 13 years in Mecca, the total number of people who accepted Islam was no more than 300 and something. 13 years. Prophet Muhammad ﷺ himself calling people to Islam. 300 plus people accepted Islam. In the Medinan stage, they had 300 people accepting Islam in one instant. People would come and give their oath of allegiance to the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ on behalf of their whole tribe. One man would come and say, we're accepting Islam, I'm accepting on behalf of my whole tribe. 300, 500, one time. That's the difference. And if you study the history of Islamic movement, you find that this model was repeated over and over again. That the Muslims had to make hijrah. But hijrah doesn't necessarily mean that we all have to pack up our bags and leave America. Find an island someplace. No, it's not saying that. But it can be done right here. In any of the major cities or on the outskirts of any of the major cities or whatever. Wherever Muslims decide that this is a good location in which to develop that community, a model community can be developed. A model that can be repeated all across the country. As an example to the rest of the nation of what Islam can do for man. And that is the most powerful tool of da'wah in this country. And this is something, as I said, that we all should be working for. It should be something we have in mind. Something that we discuss, we plan, we try to find people who have a similar outlook and try to establish that. A multinational community. Not a community based on we all came over from Cambodia so we're all going to live together here. No. We all came from Egypt so we're all living together over here. No. We all are indigenous Afro-Americans so we're all living together here. No. Nature of man. How when he forgets Allah, he becomes open to fall into error, to commit sin. Through Satan suggesting, and of course Satan may not be suggesting directly, it could be through, that is not the Islamic community. The Islamic community is one which is not bound by any national or racial lines. And this is what we have to work towards. And we need to work towards that together. This is how we have to do it. We have to do it together. We can't do it thinking, for example, like our group, we'll go ahead and do it, and when we've done it, we'll call people to come and join us. No. We have to do it together. We have to be together and work together for it. We have to struggle with the problems that we have, work them out according to the Qur'an and the Sunnah now before we form the community. We have to fight against the tendency to break away. You know, what tends to happen is that we have a community, some misunderstandings take place, and then you find people breaking off and going off to make their own community. And in that community, after a while, some misunderstandings get to us, and then someone else breaks off and goes and finds another community. We have to fight against that. We don't need it. The Islamic community is one community. The Islamic nation is one nation. This is what Allah has told us. And this is what we have to work towards. Tackle our problems. Don't run away from them. We don't solve them by running away. We solve them by sticking together, tackling the issues, working them out according to Qur'an and Sunnah. Not according to how I feel, what I think. I don't like your personality and you don't like my personality. This is not how we resolve our problems. We will resolve our problems by taking them back to the Qur'an and the Sunnah and finding the Islamic solution. And that way, if we struggle together, then we can lay the foundation of establishing a Muslim community area, which could then be, as I said, one of the most powerful means of conveying the message of Islam to this nation. Now, in working to get Islam out to people on an individual level, for some of us who may have difficulty in communicating, our language may not be so good, maybe we came from a country where English is not the language, so we're not able to express ourselves too well, maybe shy to try to speak to people about Islam. There are other ways in which we can get the message across to them. We can do so by, instead of trying to talk, you have small pamphlets. We can give it to them. But as I said, our moral character, if that is in accordance with Islam, then people will be interested and willing to accept from us such things. I recall just last year in Riyadh, this member of the military had called me up, American. He called me up, he said he wanted to talk to me about Islam. He was interested in accepting Islam. So I picked him up, took him over to my house, and we were discussing. You know, he was very eager to know about Islam, so and so. We sat again maybe once more, and then he accepted Islam. So I asked him, you know, what started you thinking about Islam in the first place? He told me, he said, well, you know, I'd gone downtown to buy some gold for my fiancée. Right? And the owner of the gold shop, he didn't know any English. I mean, beyond calculations, dollars, $5, $10, you know, he could just give them numbers, and that's all he had. But at the same time, he had a little stack of pamphlets. So after the guy bought the gold, he gave him a pamphlet along with it. So he took it. On the way back to the housing area where he was staying, on the bus, he was reading it. It struck him. Here were certain things which seemed to agree with ideas that he had come to years before about Christianity. You know, he started to see a great similarity, and it sparked his interest. Though he wasn't really thinking, he didn't come down there thinking about religion or anything. But, you know, just out of curiosity, nothing to do. He's sitting on the bus, he started to read this thing, and it started him thinking. Because what had happened is that, of course, he was raised a nominal Christian, like most Americans. And at a certain point, he started to question these things that were told to him, and he felt this didn't seem reasonable, and he had come to certain conclusions for himself about what Christianity probably originally was. And then what he found in the pamphlet was things agreeing with the conclusions that he had come to. And that set him going. From there he started to try to find other people. He came across some Muslims, he asked them, they gave him more books, he read more and more till somebody said, listen, call Bilal Phillips, he'll explain to you some more. So he called me up and there he entered Islam. But it started from just that pamphlet handed to him, even though he had no intention. So we're saying that this is one of the indirect methods. It may be just a pamphlet, or it may be a tape, audio tape, maybe a videotape. People may be invited to Islamic occasions. You have the aqiqah, when the baby on the 7th day, you're going to make that sacrifice in thanks to Allah and give some charity out of the meat, as well as name the child on that day, circumcise the child, the aqiqah ceremony. You can invite non-Muslim to it, your neighbor or whatever, and they can observe and see what you're doing. Or if there's a Muslim wedding, non-Muslim can be invited. See it. See the difference. It may cause that person to reflect, raise some questions, and cause them to start to investigate. So this is among the indirect ways, inviting them to different Islamic occasions and activities. Now, in terms of the direct methods, the direct methods could be summed up as one, the argumentative method, and two, the explanatory method. Now, the argumentative method I consider to be the method or we call it the Ahmed Didat method. This is the argumentative method, right? Where you find all the faults of Christianity and you beat the person you're talking to death with them, right? You club them over the head with these facts and figures, right? What I have found from personal experience, and observation, is that this is not very effective. In fact, it chases people away, with few exceptions. It chases people away. It may be a suitable method in dealing with the missionary, bombastic types, the Jimmy Swaggarts and this type of thing. It's good. Maybe it's a good method to deal with those kind of individuals, right? The confrontative type circumstances. It's a useful method there. But now, as a method to carry the word of Islam to the average Christian, it's not really a suitable method, in my view. The explanatory method we could call the Jamal Badawi method, where Islam is just explained to people. This is what Islam is, and, in a calm and, educative kind of manner, without making fun of snide remarks and, snickering and this type of thing. You just present it to people. And in fact, this method is more in keeping with the method of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, and in keeping with the Qur'an in its presentation of the facts. The Qur'an actually tells us not to curse the idols of those who worship idols, lest they curse Allah and make the situation worse for themselves. We should not make fun of their falsehood that they're involved in. Because our intention here is what? To win an argument, to beat our opponent, competition, or is it to get across the truth? To get across Islam, the truth. So we want to present it to them in a fashion which would be most acceptable. A fashion which does not involve hurting their feelings, destroying whatever it is that they're holding on to. You're just sort of pulling the rug out from under them. This method as I said, it's not a very effective method. Now, for one to present Islam according to this explanatory method, there are certain points which we need to keep in mind. One, we have to ourselves practice what it is we're preaching. Very important. That we're not telling people this, that, and the other, and we're not doing it ourselves. We have to be, we said, the example. This indirect method has to be combined in our direct method. We have to be an example of what we're calling people to. Otherwise, the message is not going to get across to people, because they're going to be observing and seeing what you're doing. That is related to sincerity. Because if you're sincere in what you profess to believe in, then you're going to do. It is insincerity which would lead someone to tell people about the good of Islam and everything, and they're not doing it because they're not sincere. They're telling people or calling people for some other intention, to show off to others how great a speaker they may be, so that people will admire them. Wow, listen to that person. Hey, he can talk, brother. He is. That's not the right way. That's not the way of da'wah. That is the way of the devil. Person who has been deceived by the devil, seeking the material things instead of seeking reward from Allah. So sincerity has to be there. And sincerity leads the person to tell the truth, to stick to the truth. Because, unfortunately, we'll find people sometimes when giving da'wah will make statements which are not true. They think that they're doing it, because it's the truth that they're trying to get across, and for the sake of the truth, they will lie. Make exaggerated statements, which, when proven false, will cause the people to reject everything you have said. For example, it was mentioned to me, one lecturer in university was talking along with a representative from the Christian and Jewish faith, one of these interfaith dialogues, and they were talking about women's rights. And after he had proven that women are given more rights in Islam than really found in Judaism or Christianity, according to the original teachings of Christianity, he went on to make the statement that Islam even gives more rights than the feminists are demanding today. That what the feminists are demanding today, Islam gives even more than what they're demanding. But it's not true. If Islam gave what the feminists were demanding, then we would have female imams leading the salah. Because this is what they would demand. Why can't the woman lead the prayer? If you have men, why can't women? They would be standing side by side with us in salah. And we know, in fact, the family, the Muslim family, the man is the head of the family. The final say is in his hand. That is the Islamic view. If from the feminist point, well, we're equal. A man is equal to the woman, is equal to the man. Why should the final say be in his hand? So you see, all of these things show that in fact what the man is saying isn't true. His intention might have been good, but he has not told the truth. And once anybody picks up on that and proves, in fact, because that's what did happen, somebody from the audience questioned about why they don't have female imams, and he had no answer. You see? And so on. So he was made to seem like a liar. Don't go overboard. Stick to the truth. Don't talk about what you don't know. See, it's like the issue of who can give da'wah. Does a person have to be a scholar of Islam before they can give da'wah? Convey the message? No. No, it's not so. However, we are required to find out about Islam, to study, and to increase our knowledge, to be better able to explain Islam properly to people. And if our knowledge is limited, we only call within the bounds, the limitations of what we know. We don't go beyond what we know. So we end up telling people our version. Not Islam, but Hislam. And her lamb, you know. Instead of Islam, it's everybody else's lamb, but not Islam. No, we have to stick to Islam. And in that way, everybody can convey the message. As the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ had said, بَلِّغُوا عَنِّي وَلَوْ آيَةً. So if you only have a verse from the Qur'an that you've learned, pass that on. Don't go beyond it. If you don't have any knowledge, you stay with what you have. Give that. When the person has questions, etc., you say, okay, please, we have some other people, I'll take you to see these other people. They know more than me. They can explain better to you. There is no shame in telling people that that's as much as I know, really, And passing them on to somebody else who knows more to help them. Also, we have to be patient. In conveying the message, we have to be patient. That is, we can't expect just because you've explained the message to the person, they're supposed to accept Islam. You're frustrated. Why they didn't accept Islam? I told them everything and they don't want to accept Islam. This is how people get, upset like this. No. Guidance is with Allah. Our job is not to guide people in the sense of to put faith in their heart. Allah puts the faith in their heart. If they want it, then Allah will help them to find it. That's why Allah said in the Qur'an, إِنَّمَا عَلَيْكَ الْبَلَاغُ وَعَلَيْنَا الْحِسَابُ. That what is on us is balagh, is to carry the message. And what is on Allah is to take the people to account. He's the one who takes people to account. Why you didn't accept the message. We don't have to ask them that. We just tell it to them. So it means that we have to be patient. We explain to a person, we don't expect that he must accept Islam right then. If he wants to find out more, we continue with it. You continue and continue until he says, okay, enough, thank you. He says, enough, okay, fine. You don't get upset. You're not upset because you've given him everything he hasn't accepted. Leave him. Because you may have planted a seed which will grow at a later point. Flourish, blossom at another point in time. I know myself, many people, who I gave Shahada to. Were not people who I sat with them from A all the way to Z. There are people who have been working on them here, there. It just so happened I came along at the time when they were at the final step, and I just explained the last 2 points they accepted. That's how it is in most cases. Sometimes, of course, people do have the opportunity to actually introduce the idea, follow up, and they stay with that person all the way to the end. But many times, many of us, who lead people to Islam by Allah's will, usually they are just at a certain point. They're not the ones who took them all the way. Everybody had a share in there, including the individual himself or herself, doing some reading, questioning for themselves. So we have to keep that in mind. We give the message and allow it a chance to take root and to grow. And when we consider the case of Prophet Muhammad and the prophets before, we know all that we've read in the Qur'an about the struggles that they faced, conveying the message, being rejected, prophets that were killed, conveying the message. So we have to be patient, to have what we call sabr. As Allah says in the Qur'an, وَبَشِّرِ الصَّابِرِينَ. Give glad tidings to those who are patient. Because that's the bottom line. In this world, just patience. in conveying the message also, we have to keep in mind priorities. Somebody comes to the masjid, they want to know about Islam. A woman, her hair is uncovered. Maybe she's wearing tight pants. Somebody, no, get her out the masjid, she can't come in like this. No. She must cover her hair and wait. She's come to find out about Islam. Most important is for her to know about Allah. After she's understood that and she finds out about Salah, and in wearing Salah it requires her to cover herself and loose clothing, the information will come to her. When she comes, she wants to know about Islam, then we have to give it to her. We don't start to get worked up about secondary issues and primary issues are not taken care of. You know, like one brother came to me and asked me about music. Music is haram. In conveying Islam to people, we don't even need to get into music. Yes, music is haram. Music that we know that's around today that people listen to, 99.99% of it is haram music. But it is not the kind of haram that is going to take a person who listens to music is taken into hell immediately. No. It's harmful to individuals. But there is a much greater harm if a person is worshipping other than Allah. That's a greater harm because that's taken into hell. So better for us to tackle the big issue. Get that clear. Who is Allah? Establish your prayer. Prayer helps to build that link with Allah. Fasting, purify, cleanse the individual. Strengthen his connection with Allah, his consciousness of Allah. Giving zakah, further purifying his wealth. And with those things, finding out more about Islam, reading the Qur'an, reading of the Sunnah, the more the person gets involved in Islam and the practices of Islam, then they will find less and less time to listen to music. And they will of themselves, inshallah, get rid of it eventually. You may not even have to say anything. So, there are many secondary issues which, in the course of conveying the message of Islam, we don't get into. If they are raised, of course, the person did hear somehow, as he is searching about Islam, he did hear somehow Islam doesn't like music. So they may ask you. You can't lie. You can't say, no, Islam likes music, No, you can't lie. You have to say, well, no, it's not like in Islam. It's really not allowed, etc. But don't worry about that right now. That's not important. You deal with that later on. That's the issue that you can deal with later on. Let's get back to what really is Islam. What is the fundamental thing? Because same thing, like a sister may be interested, but she says, I don't think I can cover my hair. I don't think I can wear a scarf all the time like this. They say, okay, don't worry about the scarf right now. Let's see what Islam is first. See who is Allah. Let's get to find out who you're supposed to be worshipping, who you should be serving in your life. After understanding that, you explain to her about Salah, and then you have to explain to her about covering for the Salah. Maybe she will just cover her head for the prayer. After that, she wants to take it off. Okay? But you let her carry on building her Islam in the other ways. Eventually, she'll come to realize and absorb the concept that Allah is not just in the masjid. He's not just looking at you when you're waking Salah. This responsibility is all the time. Allah sees you when you leave the masjid too. That consciousness will bring her, inshallah, to cover herself as she should. So, very important to follow the principle of prioritizing, to put things, the more important things, before the lesser important things. And of course, this is in the area of practices. This is not in the area of the fundamentals of faith. Like if you meet somebody who's a Buddhist or a Hindu, they got some idols at home. It's not that you say, okay, we don't deal with these idols right now. It's okay, you can keep your idols, but let's find... No. That has to be cleared away right from the get-go. because that is dealing with the fundamentals of the faith. You can't have faith and have idols. The two don't come together. So those things which are directly related to faith in Islam, those have no room for stages, dealing with things in stages. But it is secondary practices which, in the area of our day-to-day practices, dress codes, foods, and things like this. These type of things are the things that can be delayed. You don't have to do it right away. Deal with them right in the very beginning. Now, the last of the major principles, or no, it's really last. We also have the principle of teaching and not preaching. Teaching and not preaching. That is, that we are educating people. To educate them, you need to know what their background is. See, if you're preaching, then you have a program. Set things that you say, and you just run it down on everybody you meet. Same thing, over and over. Some it will work with, many it won't work. But that's what you're doing, you're preaching. Whereas when you're teaching, see, the caller to Islam is like a doctor. The doctor, when you come in to see the doctor, he doesn't just look at you all of a sudden, he's writing a list of medicines you have to take. No, he sits you down and finds out what are your pains, where are your pains, what's hurting you, what's ailing you. After he's found out where your sickness is and he's figured out what the sickness actually is, the basis of it, then he prescribes the necessary medicine to treat that sickness. The same thing, the Muslim who's calling is like that doctor. So you need to know what is this person about, what is their background, what are they thinking, what are their concepts. After understanding how they think, etc., the ideas, things that are important to them, then you try to find the point with which you can start to introduce Islam as a solution to certain things or problems that they face, or dealing with certain issues that they question. This is how you have to approach. In other words, that means that in communicating with people, you have to give them a chance to explain themselves. You can't be talking all the time, they never get a word in. No. You have to first try to get them to talk, Show them that you are actually interested in what they think, what they say. And then you start to try to deal with the issues. The last point that I would like to mention of the issues that we should keep in mind is that we have to acquire our knowledge about Islam from the authentic sources of Islam. And this is very, very important.